Welcome back, everyone. Time for another news roundup where we sort through the major global events that have unfolded this week. It's been a busy one with political shifts, international trials, and even a touch of technology solving crime.
It really has been a whirlwind, and the consequences of these events will likely be felt for months and years to come.
Let's jump right in with Syria, where we saw the surprisingly swift fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime. It's remarkable how little resistance his loyalists put up, almost like they just gave up.
It makes you wonder about the true strength of authoritarian regimes, doesn't it? Decades of iron-fisted rule can crumble so quickly. And now, at the helm, we have Ahmed al-Shara, the former jihadist fighter once known as Abu Muhammad al-Julani.
Talk about a plot twist. His group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, taking control is definitely raising eyebrows. A lot of countries still have them labeled as a terrorist organization.
It really begs the question, what kind of Syria will they create? We see some signs pointing towards a more moderate approach. They've granted amnesty to former soldiers, banned revenge attacks, and even softened their rhetoric on Israel. But then there was that incident where al-Shara asked a woman to cover her hair for a photo op.
Yeah, that was strange.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what's genuine and what's just for show, right?
Exactly. And we can't forget the pressure he's under from within his own group. There are hardliners in HTS pushing for a strict Islamic state with morality police and crackdowns on anything they deem un-Islamic.
So al-Shara is in a very precarious position, trying to appease the international community while keeping his own base from turning against him, all while facing the monumental task of rebuilding a war-torn nation.
And let's not forget the ongoing search for those who disappeared during the Assad regime. The white helmets are uncovering mass graves, finding bodies just dumped in plastic bags. Imagine the anguish of those families, desperate for any news.
It's a stark reminder of the true human cost of conflict, isn't it? Over 100,000 people still missing, and many are believed to have been tortured and killed in Assad's prisons. The scale of it is just staggering.
There were even refrigerated containers used to transport bodies. It's hard to comprehend the level of systematic brutality involved.
This search for the missing, identifying the remains, it's a huge undertaking. And the desire of these families to finally bury their loved ones adds another layer of urgency to it all. This is something that's going to require a lot of international assistance, both in terms of expertise and resources.
It's about more than just giving families closure, though. It's about accountability, documenting the atrocities, and hopefully preventing history from repeating itself.
Now, shifting our focus to France, where another powerful story has been unfolding. The Giselle Pellicot rape trial. With 51 men on trial, including her ex-husband, it's the largest rape trial in France's history.
It's the sheer scale of this case that initially drew everyone's attention, but then you have Giselle Pellicot herself, who's become a symbol of courage and resilience.
She chose to waive her right to anonymity, make her story public, and go through this grueling trial to make sure, as she put it, that shame changes sides. I can't imagine the strength that took, especially considering what she endured. For almost a decade, she was drugged and raped by her husband, who brought all these other men into it.
It's horrific. Dominique Pellicot confessed, but many of the other defendants denied the rape charges, even though some admitted to having sex with her while she was unconscious.
The court has reached its verdict. Dominique Pellicot got the maximum sentence, 20 years. The other men were also found guilty, receiving varying sentences. But some argue those sentences weren't harsh enough, given the gravity of their crimes and the lasting damage they've inflicted on Giselle's life.
But Giselle has expressed satisfaction with the outcome, and she's remained steadfast in her commitment to ensuring that shame changes sides. This case has ignited a nationwide conversation about consent, victim blaming, and the need to challenge the norms that perpetuate rape culture.
This trial's impact will definitely be felt far beyond France's borders.
It absolutely will. Giselle Pellicot's bravery has inspired countless others to come forward and demand justice. It's a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable abuse, there's hope, strength, and a path toward healing and justice.
Okay, from a landmark trial in France, let's turn to the halls of power in the United States. Elon Musk, the tech mogul, has really inserted himself into the political arena, using his platform to try and sway Congress.
His very public opposition to a bipartisan spending deal definitely ruffled some feathers. Conservative lawmakers, emboldened by his stance, started pushing back against the proposed bill.
And it worked. The bill failed, forcing Republican leadership to scramble for a solution. It's really remarkable how someone outside the government can wield such influence.
This episode has definitely exposed some potential fault lines in the political landscape. With Republicans controlling both chambers of Congress, the big question is, will they be able to maintain a unified front? Or will internal divisions and external pressures like Musk's continue to undermine their agenda?
It really highlights the power of social media and the influence individuals, particularly those with massive platforms, can have. Raises some interesting questions about accountability and the role of unelected individuals in the political process.
It'll be fascinating to see how this dynamic evolves in the coming months and years.
Now let's shift our attention to Myanmar, where it seems the military junta's grip on power might be loosening. A BBC investigation has revealed that they actually only control about 21% of the country's territory.
This loss of control is due to a number of factors, including the persistent resistance from various ethnic armed groups, a growing network of civilian militias, and, perhaps most surprising, a wave of defections from within the military itself.
Soldiers switching sides. Wow, that's unexpected. What's driving them to do that?
It seems to be a combination of things. Some are disgusted by the military's brutality against civilians, having witnessed atrocities firsthand. Others are disillusioned with the junta's leadership, realizing that their fight is becoming increasingly futile.
And then there are those simply driven by a desire to survive. The BBC spoke to one corporal, nicknamed Mo, who became a spy for the resistance after his wife, fearing for his safety, urged him to defect.
These defectors, nicknamed watermelons, green on the outside, rebel red within, are playing a crucial role in the resistance. They're leaking vital information, things like troop movements, weapon caches, even assassination plots.
It's a high-stakes game, operating undercover with that constant threat of being exposed. Their commitment to this cause is truly remarkable.
It speaks to the widespread opposition to this junta and the deep desire for the return of democracy. However, the struggle is far from over. The military remains a formidable force, capable of inflicting immense damage as we've seen with their recent deadly bombings.
It's a stark reminder of the price of freedom and the human cost to this ongoing conflict. And it really underscores the need for the international community to do more to support the people of Myanmar in their pursuit of a just and peaceful future.
Their voices deserve to be heard, their struggles supported.
Now, let's take a detour to India for a story that's a bit less weighty, but no less intriguing. A couple there found themselves in court, at odds over what to name their baby. The disagreement became so heated, it threatened their marriage.
This case highlights the cultural significance of names in India. Choosing the right name is seen as essential for a child's well-being, and it reflects on the family's honor and future.
Neither parent would budge, so they ended up in court. The judge had to step in and act as a mediator, encouraging them to find a compromise.
Talk about an unconventional role for the judicial system.
Right. After much deliberation, they settled on a name chosen by the court, Aryavardhana, meaning of nobility.
It's an interesting example of the court stepping in to resolve even the most personal of disputes. It shows how outside intervention can help bridge the gap between two very different points of view.
And maybe little Aryavardhana will grow up to be a skilled negotiator, adept at compromise.
Who knows, maybe a future diplomat.
Now, back to a more serious topic. A new report by Human Rights Watch accuses Israel of committing acts of genocide in Gaza, claiming they've intentionally deprived Palestinians of water.
This is a very serious accusation with potentially huge implications. Human Rights Watch claims Israel's actions, specifically the damage they've inflicted on water and sanitation infrastructure, have likely led to thousands of deaths. They're calling this the crime against humanity of extermination.
Israel, of course, vehemently denies these allegations. They say they haven't intentionally harmed civilians and point to the fact that they've facilitated the flow of water and aid into Gaza despite operating under constant threat from Hamas.
This situation really highlights the complexity of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Determining intent, especially in a war zone, is incredibly difficult. And assigning blame becomes even more complicated when both sides accuse each other of using civilians as human shields. It's crucial to consider all perspectives, examine the evidence carefully, and avoid jumping to conclusions.
Nuance is key, especially with such a sensitive and emotionally charged issue.
Absolutely. And speaking of charged issues, things are heating up at Starbucks. Thousands of baristas are preparing to strike, demanding better pay, working conditions, and more manageable schedules.
This labor dispute reflects a broader trend, this tension between corporations and their employees in a post-pandemic world. Workers are demanding more from their employers, higher wages to keep up with inflation, better benefits, more flexibility.
Starbucks is facing a double whammy. They're dealing with this labor unrest while also grappling with declining sales. Seems like the recent price hikes and the boycott calls stemming from the Israel-Gaza conflict have taken a toll.
It's a tough time for businesses navigating this shifting economic landscape. The rising cost of living is affecting everyone, and companies are trying to balance profitability with treating their workforce fairly. This Starbucks strike is just a small part of a much bigger picture. We can probably expect to see more labor activism as workers push to get their fair share.
I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Now, on to North Korea, which has been making headlines lately. Remember those troops they sent to help Russia in Ukraine? Well, reports indicate the casualties are mounting. Some South Korean officials estimate that over 100 North Korean soldiers have been killed, with many more injured.
It's a grim reminder of war's human toll, often borne by those who have the least say in the matter. These North Korean soldiers are essentially pawns in a larger geopolitical game. They're poorly equipped, lacking in modern combat training, and thrown into a brutal and unfamiliar battlefield.
And to add to their difficulties, there's a language barrier. Communicating with their Russian counterparts is a nightmare. There have even been reports of friendly fire incidents, with North Korean troops accidentally attacking Russian battalions.
It speaks volumes about the desperation of Putin's regime, having to rely on foreign conscripts to bolster their dwindling forces. It also shows Kim Jong-un's willingness to sacrifice his own people for political gain.
Speaking of political gain, let's circle back to Syria for a moment. We talked about those internal tensions within HTS. It seems like al-Shara is facing growing criticism from hardliners unhappy with his attempts to soften the group's image and present a more moderate front.
The cracks are definitely starting to show. Hardliners see his amnesty for former regime soldiers and his more conciliatory language towards Israel as betrayals. They want swift and strict implementation of Sharia law and the transformation of Syria into a true Islamic state.
And they're not shy about voicing their displeasure. There have been protests, online outrage, even calls to defy al-Shara's orders. He's trying to walk a tightrope, appease the international community, while keeping his own base from turning against him.
It really raises the question, can he maintain control? Will he cave to the hardliners, potentially jeopardizing his efforts to build a more inclusive, internationally acceptable government? The future of Syria hangs in the balance.
Now, to a heartbreaking story out of Nigeria. A Christmas fun fair in Ibadan ended tragically when a crowd surge led to the deaths of 35 children, with many others injured.
It's a sobering reminder that even in the midst of celebration, tragedy can strike. This incident highlights the absolute necessity of crowd control and proper safety measures, especially for large gatherings involving children.
Organizers were offering cash handouts and food, which drew a massive crowd, reportedly over 10,000 people. When they arrived, things quickly spiraled out of control as people pushed and shoved to get in.
The Nigerian government has launched an investigation and arrested 8 people, including the main organizer. It's vital to determine what went wrong and hold those responsible accountable. This tragedy should serve as a wake-up call to review safety protocols for similar events in the future.
It also speaks to the economic hardship many Nigerians face. The promise of even a small amount of cash or food can be overwhelming, especially for struggling families. It's a reflection of the deep inequalities that persist in Nigerian society.
It underscores the urgent need for economic reforms and social safety nets to help alleviate poverty and create a more equitable society.
Shifting gears to Italy now, where a high-stakes political drama is unfolding. Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini is awaiting a verdict in his trial for kidnapping and dereliction of duty.
The charges stem from his 2019 refusal to allow a migrant rescue boat to dock in Italy.
This case has been politically charged from the very beginning. Prosecutors are seeking a 6-year jail sentence, arguing that Salvini violated international law and put migrant lives at risk. But Salvini maintains he was protecting Italy's borders, acting in his country's best interests.
He's been very vocal in his defiance, accusing the judges of political bias and vowing to appeal if convicted. His supporters have rallied around him, some even hailing him as a hero for his stance on immigration.
This issue has really exposed the deep societal anxieties surrounding immigration, questions of national identity, and the role of the government in protecting its borders.
Yeah.
The verdict, no matter what it is, will undoubtedly have significant political repercussions.
Absolutely. It will be a defining moment in Italian politics.
Let's head back to Syria for a moment. Remember that photo op where al-Shara asked a woman to cover her hair? Well, he's trying to downplay the controversy, saying it was blown out of proportion.
It's a calculated move to mitigate the backlash he's received from both sides, liberals and conservatives. He's walking a very fine line here, reassuring the international community that he's not about to impose strict Islamic dress codes while simultaneously placating hardliners who see any interaction with an unveiled woman as a transgression.
It's a delicate balancing act, trying to appeal to multiple audiences with completely opposing expectations. But it's not just about appearances. There are genuine concerns about how HTS plans to govern and the role Islamic law will play in their vision for Syria's future.
The international community is watching very closely, waiting to see if al-Shara's actions will match his words. His ability to navigate these competing pressures will determine whether HTS can successfully transition from a militant group to a legitimate governing body.
Now, from Syria to France, where another high-profile trial has just concluded. This was the case against the individuals accused of abetting the murder of Samuel Paty, the teacher who was beheaded in 2020 after showing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad in a class on freedom of speech.
This trial went beyond just assigning blame for a horrific crime. It became a public reckoning with the deep societal divisions surrounding Islam, freedom of speech, and the limits of tolerance in a secular society.
8 people stood trial, including the father of a schoolgirl who lied about Patty's lesson, which sparked the online hate campaign that ultimately led to his death. They were charged with terrorist association, even though they had no direct knowledge of the attack itself.
The court had to grapple with a very complex question. Do words become criminal based on their consequences? It's a weighty legal issue with profound implications for freedom of expression. The prosecution argued that those who spread hatred and incite violence, even indirectly, must be held accountable.
This case has truly shaken France to its core, prompting a national debate about the delicate balance between protecting freedom of speech and combating hate speech. The verdicts will likely shape how France addresses these sensitive issues moving forward.
This trial has exposed some very deep wounds within French society. Healing and reconciliation will require open and honest dialogue, confronting uncomfortable truths and reaffirming a commitment to tolerance and respect for all.
From the complexities of free speech to the brink of a government shutdown, we turn back to the United States. Remember how Elon Musk threw a wrench into that bipartisan spending deal? Well, the fallout from that political earthquake continues to reverberate through the halls of Congress.
The U.S. government came perilously close to shutting down. Federal agencies were preparing to close their doors, all because of Musk's intervention. It's a stark demonstration of how a single individual wielding the power of social media can disrupt the delicate balance of power in a democracy.
And to make matters worse, President-elect Donald Trump jumped on the bandwagon, echoing Musk's criticisms and urging Republicans to reject the deal. It created absolute chaos, leaving Republican leadership scrambling to pick up the pieces.
They eventually cobbled together a new proposal, but it was a watered-down version, lacking many of the provisions that Democrats had fought for. It was a tough pill to swallow, but with a shutdown looming, they had little choice.
This whole episode raises serious questions about the future of governing in the U.S. With a slim majority in the House, Republicans are going to have to find a way to maintain unity, resist outside influences like Musk, and be willing to compromise with Democrats to achieve any legislative success.
It's a tall order, to say the least.
It will be interesting to see how they handle this in the coming months. The world is watching, eager to see if the U.S. can overcome its deep political divisions and forge a path towards stability and progress.
It's a pivotal moment, that's for sure.
Okay, let's journey now to Romania, where a legal battle involving the controversial Tate brothers, Andrew and Tristan, has taken a new turn. Their human trafficking case has hit a snag.
The Romanian court has sent the case back to prosecutors, citing irregularities in the indictment. It's a setback for the prosecution, who have accused the brothers of exploiting women through their webcam business, which they allege was essentially a criminal enterprise.
This isn't the first hurdle prosecutors have faced in this case, is it?
Not at all. Back in November, the court threw out several pieces of evidence, including statements from alleged victims, deeming them inadmissible. Right now, it seems like the Tate brothers are winning this legal battle.
But the fight's not over yet, right?
Correct. Prosecutors have 10 days to amend their indictment, and they've made it clear they intend to press on. The brothers are also facing a second criminal investigation stemming from new allegations of trafficking minors, sexual intercourse with a minor, and money laundering. So while they might be celebrating the small victory, they're not out of the woods just yet.
This case has garnered a lot of attention internationally, not just because of the notoriety of the accused, but also because it raises important questions about online misogyny, the ethics of the influencer industry, and the challenges of prosecuting human trafficking cases.
It's a story with many layers, and we'll be following it closely as it develops.
From the courtroom to the battlefield, let's turn our attention to the war in Yemen, where we've seen a worrying escalation of violence. Israel has launched airstrikes against Houthi targets, claiming it's in retaliation for missile and drone attacks from Yemen.
This escalation is deeply concerning in a conflict that has already claimed far too many lives. The Houthis, an Iran-backed rebel group that controls much of Yemen, have intensified their attacks on Israel, claiming solidarity with the Palestinians.
One of their missiles struck a school in Ramat Gan, just outside Tel Aviv, thankfully causing no injuries but resulting in significant damage. Israel responded with force, targeting ports, energy infrastructure, and military sites in Yemen.
This tit-for-tat exchange shows how easily regional conflicts can spill over and create a domino effect of violence. The war in Gaza has emboldened the Houthis, who see an opportunity to strike at Israel and further destabilize the region.
This conflict is incredibly complex, with no easy solutions in sight, and the involvement of external actors, including Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United States, just adds to the complexity. Finding a path to peace will require a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of the conflict, things like poverty, political instability, and foreign interference.
It's going to require all sides to come to the negotiating table, willing to make compromises and work towards a solution that benefits all Yemenis, not just those in positions of power.
From the war-torn landscapes of Yemen, let's travel to Spain, where technology played a crucial role in solving a crime. A Google Street View image helped police crack a murder case in the town of Tahueco.
It's a fascinating example of how seemingly mundane data can become crucial evidence. The Google Street View car, equipped with its 360-degree cameras, captured an image of a suspect loading a large white bag into his car.
Police believe that bag contained the dismembered remains of the victim. 2 suspects have been arrested, a woman believed to be the victim's partner, and a man thought to be her ex-partner. The investigation is ongoing, but that Google Street View image was a key piece of the puzzle, helping police reconstruct the timeline of events.
This case really highlights the growing role of technology in law enforcement. From surveillance cameras to facial recognition software, the tools available to investigators are constantly evolving. While these advancements can be incredibly helpful in solving crimes, they also raise important questions about privacy and civil liberties.
It's a delicate balance societies need to grapple with as technology continues to reshape our world.
We need to ensure these powerful tools are used responsibly and ethically, protecting individual rights while harnessing their potential for good.
Let's check back in on those North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine. We talked about the mounting casualties, and now some disturbing details are emerging about their treatment and deployment.
The picture isn't pretty. These soldiers are essentially being used as cannon fodder, thrown into the most dangerous areas with little regard for their safety. They're poorly equipped, lack modern combat skills, and often find themselves under the command of Russian officers who barely speak their language.
It's a recipe for disaster. To make matters worse, the North Korean government seems content to turn a blind eye to their suffering. They're prioritizing their alliance with Russia and whatever political or economic benefits they can squeeze out of it.
It's a stark reminder of the brutal reality of life under an authoritarian regime. The lives of ordinary citizens are often expendable, sacrificed for political expediency.
It also highlights the moral complexities of international relations. When countries prioritize strategic interests over human rights, the consequences can be devastating.
This story really underscores the need for greater transparency, accountability, and a true commitment to upholding human dignity, even in the chaos and brutality of war.
Now, to a maritime tragedy off the coast of Mumbai. A Navy speedboat collided with a ferry, resulting in 13 deaths, and 2 people are still missing.
It's a heartbreaking accident that raises concerns about safety protocols and the potential for human error in maritime operations. The Navy is investigating the cause of the collision and looking into whether there were any procedural lapses that contributed to the tragedy.
Eyewitnesses described a scene of chaos and panic as the speedboat slammed into the ferry. Survivors recounted having to swim for their lives amidst the wreckage. It's a tragedy that's deeply affected the community.
The Indian government has announced compensation for the families of the victims and those who were injured, but no amount of money can truly make up for the loss of life or the trauma inflicted.
It's a stark reminder of life's fragility and the importance of prioritizing safety in all our endeavors.
It underscores the need for robust safety measures, rigorous training, and a culture of vigilance to prevent such tragedies from happening.
From the waters of Mumbai to Moscow, where we have another assassination to report. A senior Russian general, Igor Kirillov, and his assistant were killed by a bomb concealed in an electric scooter.
This brazen attack has shattered the sense of normalcy that had persisted in Moscow, despite the ongoing war in Ukraine. It's a stark reminder that the conflict's reach extends far beyond the battlefield, bringing violence and instability to the heart of Russia.
This assassination has sent shockwaves through the city. Residents are on edge, wondering if they could be next. The Kremlin is scrambling to find those responsible and vowing swift retribution.
It's a blow to Putin's image as a strongman leader. It could also embolden those who oppose the war in Ukraine, potentially fueling dissent and unrest within Russia itself.
This incident really exposes the growing vulnerability of Russia's security apparatus. Despite their claims of strength and control, they've failed to protect one of their own high-ranking officials.
This assassination is a game changer. It raises the stakes in an already volatile conflict. The coming days and weeks will be crucial as we watch the Kremlin's response and assess the potential impact on the trajectory of the war.
And now, a story of accountability and justice, though long delayed. 5 people have been jailed in Venezuela for their role in covering up the 2015 murder of the rapper Canserbero.
This case is a reminder that even in the face of corruption and impunity, the truth can eventually come to light. Canserbero's death was initially ruled a suicide. But thanks to new evidence and a confession from his manager, a much darker story has unfolded.
It turns out his manager, Natalia Amestica, drugged and stabbed Canserbero and his friend, Carlos Molnar. To cover up her crimes, she enlisted the help of her brother and 3 corrupt police officers to stage the scene to look like a murder-suicide.
It was an elaborate web of deceit that finally unraveled years later thanks to the persistence of investigators and the courage of witnesses who came forward. This case highlights the importance of holding those in power accountable, even when they try to manipulate the system to evade justice.
It's a testament to the enduring power of truth and the importance of pursuing justice, even when it seems like a lost cause.
It's a reminder that corruption, no matter how deeply entrenched, can be exposed, and that those who abuse their power can ultimately be held accountable.
From the complexities of Venezuelan justice to the political battleground of France, let's revisit the case of former President Nicolas Sarkozy. Remember his 2021 corruption conviction? Well, France's highest court has upheld that conviction, rejecting his appeal.
This ruling is a significant blow to Sarkozy, who has always maintained his innocence. He's now required to serve his sentence, which includes wearing an electronic monitoring bracelet for a year.
This case has attracted a lot of attention internationally. It really underscores the principle that no one, not even a former president, is above the law.
It's a victory for those who believe in holding powerful individuals accountable for their actions. It sends a strong message that corruption will not be tolerated, regardless of who's involved.
Sarkozy, however, isn't giving up just yet. He's taking his case to the European Court of Human Rights, claiming that he was denied a fair trial.
It remains to be seen whether his appeal will be successful. But regardless of the outcome, this case has left a lasting mark on French politics, highlighting the importance of transparency, accountability, and the pursuit of justice.
From France, let's turn our attention to Iran, where we're getting a rare glimpse into the lives of women imprisoned in the notorious Evin prison. These accounts, pieced together from various sources, paint a harrowing picture of brutality, resilience, and defiance.
Many of these women were arrested during the Woman Life Freedom protests that erupted following the death of Mahsa Amini, the young woman who died in police custody after being arrested for allegedly violating Iran's hijab laws.
They've endured solitary confinement, grueling interrogations, torture, and the constant threat of execution. But despite these horrific conditions, they haven't lost hope. They've formed strong bonds, supporting each other through these dark times.
And they found ways to resist, challenging the restrictions imposed upon them and continuing to fight for their rights. They've staged protests, gone on hunger strikes, even burned their headscarves in acts of defiance against the regime.
One story that really resonated with me was about a woman named Rizvana who, after years of struggling with infertility, discovered she was pregnant while in prison. She endured so much stress and hardship, fearing for her unborn child. But in October, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl.
It's an incredible story of resilience, even in the face of unimaginable adversity. These women cling to hope, find strength in each other, and refuse to be silenced.
From the struggle for freedom in Iran to the world of espionage. Let's talk about China and the growing concerns surrounding their United Front Work Department, or UFWD.
This department, which is a branch of the Chinese Communist Party, has long been accused of engaging in foreign interference, trying to influence public opinion, co-opt influential individuals, and silence critics of the Chinese government.
The UFWD has been linked to numerous espionage cases, with investigations in the U.S., Australia, and other countries alleging that China uses this department to advance its interests abroad.
Their tactics are varied, ranging from funding overseas Chinese community organizations to cultivating relationships with politicians, academics, and business leaders. They've also been accused of resorting to threats and intimidation to silence critics, particularly those who speak out on sensitive issues like Taiwan, Tibet, and Xinjiang.
Their growing influence is causing alarm in Western capitals and prompting governments to take action. Australia, for example, has enacted new foreign interference laws specifically designed to curb UFWD activities. And the U.S. has imposed visa restrictions on individuals involved in United Front work.
It's a difficult balancing act. Governments need to be vigilant in protecting their national security interests, but also avoid fueling anti-Chinese sentiment or unfairly targeting ethnic Chinese communities.
It's a complex issue with far-reaching implications. As China's global influence continues to grow, the UFWD will likely become an even greater source of tension and concern.
This is definitely a story that will continue to develop in the years to come, with significant consequences for international relations and the global balance of power.
From the geopolitical machinations of the UFWD to the glamorous world of Hollywood, let's turn our attention to Angelina Jolie and her latest project, a biopic about the legendary opera singer Maria Callas.
This film, titled Maria, has been generating quite a bit of buzz, not just for its subject matter, but also because two of Jolie's children, Maddox and Pax, worked on the production as assistants.
It was a unique experience for Jolie, who has talked about how her sons witnessed her vulnerability and the emotional challenges she faced while portraying the pain and complexities in Callas's life.
It's a reminder that even the most famous and successful individuals grapple with challenges and heartbreak. It also highlights the importance of family support, even when dealing with difficult situations.
The film has received mixed reviews, with some critics praising Jolie's performance while others finding it lacking. But regardless of critical reception, Maria offers a glimpse into the life of a legendary artist, exploring universal themes of love, loss, and the enduring power of art.
It reminds us of the transformative power of human connection and the importance of finding beauty and meaning, even in the face of adversity.
Okay, let's revisit that assassination in Moscow, the one where a senior Russian general was killed by a bomb planted on an electric scooter. The fallout from that event continues to reverberate within Russia and on the international stage.
Russian authorities have arrested a suspect, a 29-year-old man from Uzbekistan. They're claiming that he was recruited by Ukrainian special services and offered $100,000 and a European passport to carry out the assassination.
So they're painting this as a planned hit orchestrated by Ukraine.
That's the narrative the Kremlin is pushing. However, it's important to note that the suspect's confession was filmed and released by the FSB, Russia's security service.
Which, of course, raises doubts about whether it was genuine or coerced.
Exactly. It's impossible to know for sure. Ukraine has denied any involvement, but Moscow isn't buying it. They're already using this incident to justify escalating the war.
This whole situation feels like it could spiral out of control.
It certainly has that potential. The assassination has exacerbated tensions between Russia and the West, and could easily become a flashpoint that pushes the world closer to a wider conflict.
Let's shift gears now and talk about a story of reconciliation and compassion unfolding in Syria. Now that the Assad regime has fallen, the country faces a monumental task: searching for and identifying the remains of those killed by the regime. It's a grim reminder of the conflict's devastating human cost.
It's a grim but necessary undertaking. The White Helmets, the volunteer rescue group that operated in Syria throughout the war, have taken on this responsibility.
It must be incredibly emotionally draining work.
Without a doubt. They're painstakingly combing through mass graves, carefully excavating bodies, collecting DNA samples, and documenting everything they find.
It's all about trying to bring closure to the families of those who were lost.
And ensuring that those responsible for these atrocities are held accountable. This search for the missing underscores the immense human suffering this conflict has caused and the long, difficult road to healing that lies ahead for Syria.
It's also a testament to the resilience of the Syrian people, their determination to rebuild their lives and their nation.
This effort will require international support, both financially and in terms of expertise. The world can't turn its back on Syria as it grapples with the legacy of war and strives to build a more peaceful and just future.
Okay, from Syria, let's travel to Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing a deepening political crisis.
It began with the sudden and unexpected resignation of his Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, who cited disagreements over spending and the overall direction of the government.
Her departure has definitely shaken things up, leading to speculation about Trudeau's leadership and his ability to navigate the challenges ahead.
He's facing increasing pressure to resign both from within his own party and the opposition.
What are his options at this point?
He could choose to step down, allowing a new leader to take the helm of the Liberal Party and the government. Or he could try to ride out the storm, cling to power, and hope to. He could try to ride out the storm, hold on to power, and see if he can regain the public's trust. Of course, there's also the possibility that he'll face a no-confidence vote in Parliament, which could lead to a snap election.
It's a tough spot to be in. It'll be interesting to see which path he chooses and what the ultimate consequences are.
This crisis really highlights how precarious power can be and the constant challenges that leaders face, even those who seem untouchable.
It underscores the importance of adaptability and resilience and the need to make tough decisions when things get rough.
The political landscape in Canada is in a state of flux right now, and the outcome of this crisis will definitely shape the country's future.
From the turbulent world of politics, let's turn to a story that's captivating hearts around the globe. A young athlete with Down syndrome has accomplished an incredible athletic feat, defying the odds and inspiring millions with her determination.
It's a truly remarkable story, a testament to the power of the human spirit and the importance of breaking down barriers. She shows us that anything is possible if we set our minds to it.
Her journey is a powerful reminder that we should never underestimate anyone's abilities. It's a call to create a more inclusive world where everyone has the opportunity to shine.
I couldn't agree more. Now, from a story of inspiration to a tragedy that's sending shockwaves through communities across the United States, we turn to the issue of gun violence, which has once again claimed the lives of innocent children, leaving a nation grappling with grief and outrage.
This is a story that's become tragically familiar in the U.S., a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked access to firearms.
This latest incident has reignited the debate over gun control, with renewed calls for stricter regulations. But progress on this issue has been frustratingly slow, hampered by political gridlock and the influence of the gun lobby.
This tragedy has to be a wake-up call. We need to find a way to balance the rights of gun owners with the safety of our communities.
It's a complex challenge that requires a multifaceted approach. Addressing the root causes of gun violence, things like mental health issues, poverty, social inequality.
It demands a commitment to finding common ground, being willing to compromise, and working together to create a safer and more just society for everyone.
Well said. Now, let's end on a slightly lighter note with a story that's sure to bring a smile to everyone's face. Remember that couple in India who ended up in court over a baby name?
Oh, yeah, that one went viral.
Their story captured the internet's attention, inspiring countless memes and humorous commentary. It's a nice reminder that even amidst all the serious events happening in the world, there's always room for a little levity and humor.
It also shows how these unexpected stories can bring people together, reminding us of our shared humanity and our capacity for connection.
Exactly. It transcends cultural boundaries and brings a little lightness to our day.
It's been a week filled with news, a roller coaster of emotions, from heartbreaking to hopeful, from infuriating to inspiring. But even amidst all the chaos and uncertainty, one thing stands out: the resilience of the human spirit. People find ways to cope, to resist, to rebuild, and to find moments of joy even in the darkest times.
That's a really important point. There's always hope for a brighter future, and we should never lose sight of that.
It's a good note to end on. That wraps up this week's News Roundup.
And see if he can restore some confidence in his leadership.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. So let's move on from Canada and head back to France. The Gisèle Pelicot rape trial has concluded, and the court has delivered its verdicts. Gisèle's ex-husband, Dominique Pelicot, received the maximum sentence of 20 years.
That's for drugging and raping her, as well as for the attempted rape of another woman.
And the other 50 men involved.
Yes, the other 50 men were also found guilty. They received varying sentences, but many of them were less than what the prosecutors had requested.
You imagine that sparked some controversy.
It definitely did. A lot of people felt that the sentences didn't reflect the severity of the crimes and the impact they had on Gisèle's life.
It's understandable that people would be upset, given the nature of this case.
Of course. However, it's important to note that Gisèle herself has expressed satisfaction with the outcome. She addressed her supporters outside the courthouse and delivered a powerful statement. She said she's determined to make shame change sides.
I can only imagine how powerful and cathartic that moment must have been for her after everything she's endured.
This case has had a profound impact on France, prompting crucial discussions about consent, victim blaming, and the pervasive nature of rape culture.
It's a legal battle that's ended, But the broader fight for equality and justice continues?
Without a doubt. This trial represents a turning point, a moment of reckoning for a society that's grappling with deeply ingrained inequalities. Giselle Palico's bravery has sparked a movement, empowered survivors, and challenged those in power to create a world where these horrific crimes are no longer tolerated. It's about changing the system.
Let's return now to the assassination of that senior Russian general in Moscow. You know, the one where they found a bomb planted on an electric scooter? The ramifications of that event continue to unfold.
Russian authorities have made an arrest, a 29-year-old man from Uzbekistan. They allege that he was recruited by Ukrainian intelligence and promised a hefty sum of money and a European passport if he carried out the assassination.
So they're basically claiming this was a hit job orchestrated by Ukraine.
That's the narrative being presented by the Kremlin. It's important to remember, though, that the suspect's confession was filmed and released by the FSB, Russia's security service.
Which of course casts doubt on whether it's genuine or coerced.
Exactly. There's no way to know for sure. Ukraine has denied any involvement in the assassination, but that's unlikely to sway Moscow.
This whole situation feels like it's teetering on the brink of something much bigger.
The potential for escalation is definitely there. The Kremlin is already using this incident as justification to ramp up their aggression in Ukraine, and it's further strained relations between Russia and the West. This assassination could easily become a catalyst for a much wider conflict.
Now let's shift gears to a story of reconciliation and compassion unfolding in Syria. In the wake of the Assad regime's fall, the country is facing the monumental task of finding and identifying the remains of those killed by the regime. It's a stark reminder of the immense human cost of this conflict.
It's a difficult but crucial undertaking. The White Helmets, the volunteer rescue group that operated in Syria throughout the war, have stepped up to take on this responsibility.
I can't imagine the toll that kind of work must take on a person.
It's emotionally challenging, to say the least. They're meticulously combing through mass graves, excavating bodies, collecting DNA samples, and carefully documenting everything they find. It's a long and painstaking process.
It's all about bringing closure to the families of those who were lost, giving them a sense of peace.
And it's about accountability, ensuring that those responsible for these atrocities are brought to justice. This search for the missing really highlights the sheer scale of the suffering caused by this conflict and the long and arduous journey to healing that lies ahead for Syria.
It's also a powerful reminder of the resilience of the Syrian people and their determination to rebuild their lives and their nation.
They deserve all the support we can give them. This effort will require extensive international assistance, both in terms of funding and expertise. We cannot turn our backs on Syria as it grapples with the aftermath of this war and tries to build a better future.
From Syria, we travel to Canada, where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is facing a growing political crisis. The sudden resignation of his Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland, really threw a wrench into things.
She stepped down, citing disagreements over government spending and the direction things were heading.
It was a high-profile departure that has raised questions about Trudeau's leadership and his ability to effectively govern.
The pressure is mounting on him to resign. Calls are coming from both within his own party and from the opposition.
What are his options at this point? Resign, try to cling to power, or possibly face a no-confidence vote?
Those are the choices before him. Each one carries its own risks and potential consequences. This situation demonstrates just how quickly things can change in politics, how fragile power can be.
And it highlights the importance of adaptability, resilience, and being able to make tough calls in difficult circumstances.
The political landscape in Canada is definitely shifting, and the outcome of this crisis will have a major impact on the country's direction.
Now, from the world of politics to the depths of the ocean, a new study has revealed something fascinating about giant squid. It turns out they have a surprisingly complex nervous system.
It's a discovery that's changing the way we think about these creatures. Scientists previously believed that giant squid, with their relatively small brains, were mostly driven by instinct. But this research suggests that their neural networks are far more sophisticated than we thought.
It's a great reminder that the natural world is full of surprises, and that we still have much to learn about the incredible diversity of life on Earth.
It underscores the importance of continued scientific exploration and the need to always question our assumptions about the capabilities of other species. We can learn so much from the natural world if we keep an open mind.
Okay, let's return to Europe now and revisit that corruption trial in Italy involving Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. The verdict is in.
Salvini has been acquitted.
It's a major victory for Salvini and his supporters, who have consistently maintained his innocence. And it's a significant setback for his critics, who see him as a symbol of intolerance and a hardline stance on immigration.
The trial revolved around Salvini's actions in 2019 when, as Interior Minister, he refused to allow a migrant rescue boat with 147 people on board to dock in Italy. That ship was stuck at sea for 19 days before finally being permitted to disembark in Lampedusa.
It was a controversial move that drew international condemnation.
The prosecution argued that Salvini had overstepped his authority and put those migrants' lives in danger. But the court ultimately ruled that he acted within the bounds of his power and that there was no evidence to prove he intentionally put those people at risk.
It's a verdict that's sure to have significant political consequences, both within Italy and throughout Europe.
It could embolden Salvini and other right-wing politicians who've taken a tough stance on immigration, and it will undoubtedly reignite the debate about the European Union's migration policies and how individual member states handle the responsibility of rescuing and providing care for migrants.
This case really encapsulates the complex challenges that Europe faces as it grapples with the issues of immigration and the rise of populism. It's a multifaceted issue with no easy answers.
It's a conversation that needs to continue, with a focus on finding solutions that are both humane and practical.
Oh, it's been another eventful week filled with stories that highlight the intricacies and often the contradictions of the world we live in. From political dramas to social justice movements to scientific discoveries, there's never a dull moment.
These stories serve as a reminder that we live in a constantly changing world, a world where events both big and small can have far-reaching consequences.
It's essential to stay informed, engage in thoughtful discussions, and continue working towards a future that is more just, equitable, and peaceful for everyone. And that's a wrap for this week. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed.